I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit. I have been listening to some Grateful Dead.
Oh, really? Did you listen to Dead and Cornell?
Well, no, I need to get to that. I listened to Live from Mars Hotel.
Nice.
Is that an okay one?
That's a great one. I mean, it's an older. That's a 60s concert, right? Or 70s?
I think late 60s. I'm wading into it.
So for me, like 77 was the year that I really started to like it.
Okay. Is that the Cornell era?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great.
And there's deep conspiracy theories about the Cornell show. Like
around what, though?
So it sounds ridiculous, but there are a lot of people on the internet who think that that show never actually happened and that it was like a CIA mind control experiment.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah. We were going to talk to Tom Wagner today, and a scheduling error means that we're going to talk to him next week. So I'm not worried about that. We have enough to cover. But this is just to say that for listeners who are like, I thought we were going to hear from Tom Wagner, who runs Nighthead, and they own, at least in some portion, Singer, as well as
Hertz,
Revology, Hertz, the Yoda racing team, like a lot of really cool car-related stuff. So he's going to be awesome, and we're going to still have him next week. But we have enough to talk about otherwise because you just came back from Sevilla. I think there's still an embargo, right, on the Porsche 911?
Yes. Actually, turns out it was Malaga and Marbella.
Oh, nice.
But yes, the embargo lifts July 9th.
Right. But the interesting thing to me is that, so the new 911 GTS is a hybrid, right?
Yes.
And it's a different kind of hybrid than most hybrids, and that's not embargoed. Like, we can talk about...
known. We could talk about the car and the engineering and everything. I just can't give you any driving impressions other than to say that Ascari Circuit that is out there, this private track we were on, I love it. It's like my new favorite track. Have you been on that one, Matt?
I have ridden a Ducati on that track, yes.
Wow. How is it on a Ducati?
Amazing.
It must be... I mean, this track is long. It's like 4 miles long, right? It's got banking.
Yep.
It's got crazy turns and inclines, and I really, really liked it. Yeah,
it's awesome. And to be honest, Spain is like one of the best countries in the world for that sort of thing. But my point is just to say that we know some of the details about the 911, and the hybrid aspect of it is interesting because I am driving a hybrid sports car right now. I think it's fair to say supercar. I'm driving the Corvette E-Ray. Why wouldn't that be fair?
What's the horsepower on the E-Ray?
650 horsepower. In what world is that not a supercar? That's 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds.
And what's the price? What's the MSRP on that?
I think it's like $106,000 starting for the E-Ray.
That's not supercar pricing.
Okay, here's the thing. That's exactly my point, right? This Corvette, the E-Ray, will do anything that a supercar can do and more. In fact, I could argue better than many of the supercars out there, except for break the bank, right? It's going to be easier to afford. And the other interesting thing is that you're driving the Corvette Z06. And
yes.
That's a car that people have said is the Ferrari killer.
Yes. Now, we should really take some time to dive into this because first thing I want to say is I was also supposed to have an E-Ray this week.
Which would have been a great idea because you're driving it, I'm driving it, then we get on the show and talk about what we each think about it. Yeah.
Correct. And apparently there was a recall associated with the E-Rays, which prohibited me from receiving mine. Now, the recall was not specified. This is Chevy telling me we can't get you your car. And I said, why? And they said there's a recall. So that's disappointing. And instead of giving me the E-Ray this week, they gave me the Z06, which I do really appreciate that. But I am now even more skeptical about what is actually happening with the E-Ray because it's been out for a while, and I have yet to get my hands on it, for lack of a better term.
So I will just say that, so normally I cover things from the financial markets perspective. And so I'm sitting on TV and we'll get a headline across that, GM issues recall or Ford equals recall. And people who don't know anything about cars, they're like breathless, like, oh my God, they recalled 150,000 cars. And I'll just say,
it happens often.
It happens all the time. And they can recall it for anything. Like my biggest problem with the Corvette E-Ray that I'm driving is it's an electric button that you press to get out of the car rather than a door handle. And that button doesn't really work. So I'm sitting in the car and like trying to get out and I can't with the button. Now there is a little lever on the floor that you can use for the same purpose. So I wasn't stuck in the car, but that's the kind of thing for which you would issue a recall,
True. I would say it in my 15 plus years of automotive journalism, I've never not had a car delivered because of a recall until now.
Really?
I've had cars not delivered because somebody else crashed them, but I haven't
especially Corvettes.
had cars not delivered because of a recall. So this is new for the press car situation. But I would, and then also we should hang on this for a while because the Z06, I got it this morning and I have a lot of thoughts. We love Corvette. I just can't, back to your earlier point, Matt, I can't put Corvette, that name brand, in the supercar category. A Corvette is just not a supercar.
See, I think that's just prejudice.
Is a sports car. It's not a supercar. It's like what you were saying earlier about, can we call a Mustang a sports car? No, it's a muscle car. If we want to be that specific about things, then we will be specific. And there's no way in the world that a Corvette is a supercar.
Okay, I'll just say, first on the Mustang, that's David Weston is the one who said it's not a sports car.
Yeah, but you agreed. You kind of agreed.
Look, I'm a muscle car fan, right? And so I grew up thinking of the Corvette, the Camaro, the Mustang, and the Challenger as muscle cars, and I now no longer consider a Camaro and a Mustang muscle cars because they are sports cars.
Okay.
They're razor sharp, and that's what they're all about, is handling. And it has been that way for a long time. In terms of the Corvette being a supercar, I wouldn't have felt it was okay to call a Corvette a supercar in the past, even though, there were hammers of Corvettes even when I was a kid. Making 500-600 horsepower, but I don't think the build quality was there. I don't think the styling was there, and I think that it is now. Okay, there are recalls. I think the first big Corvette recall was for a trunk latch that wasn't working, which is like, who cares? That's the kind of recall that can happen to any car.
It's not a safety issue.
Exactly.
Yes.
I will say that the E-Ray I'm driving now is scarily fast. I mean, it's got an electric motor on the front, it's got the 6.2-liter V8 in the back, and it just absolutely flies when you put down the gas pedal, to the point where you can be doing, I'm not saying that I personally did this morning, but you could be driving
self-incriminating.
You could be driving up 684 and realize you're doing 140 miles an hour.
Wow.
And that's just an unsafe and irresponsible speed to be driving on an American highway.
Completely.
But it can happen quickly before you notice it, and you dig in the brakes, you got to push hard, but it does bring that thing to a stop quickly. The handling is amazing, and because it's four-wheel drive, I think it just lifts Corvette to another level. Like they can now compete against vehicles they couldn't have in the past because you're not worried about kicking out the rear end and losing control on a B road. I mean, it just sticks to the tarmac.
How does it sound?
It sounds amazing. Now, I haven't driven myself the Z06, but I've been in the Z06 with Mark Royce, and
you might have been in the one I have.
I think it was the same color.
Okay.
But I feel like the Corvette that I'm in now, the E-Ray, sounds amazing, and all Corvettes sound amazing. But I remember hearing the Z06 and thinking, that is a supercar sound. That's another level.
Well, look, I will say, in Hollywood this morning at like 7:30 in the morning, I could hear it coming down the road, and I knew exactly what it was. Half a mile down the road, I could hear it. Probably my neighbors didn't like that, but you're right. It sounds very aggressive. It's really loud. I mean, you can adjust the sound in the Z06. But yes, I would say for me, the Corvette at this point can compete against some supercars. That is how I would put it. I would not call it a supercar, but I would agree with you that it certainly can compete. And actually, this Z06, the one that I have, the spec on that is like $150,000, which sounds even more expensive than your hybrid.
True, but it's not as expensive as buying a Ferrari, right? And
no, not at all.
So like Eddie Alterman, who is an automotive journalist for whom I have a lot of respect, has said, like, this is a car that can compete with and beat a Ferrari on so many different levels, right? It's that your Z06 has 670 horsepower. The motor is behind you now instead of in front of you. It holds like 1.25 Gs on the skid pad. It is 0 to 60 in almost 2.5 seconds. Not quite as quick as the E-Ray.
I think it's 2.9. I want to say 2.9.
Well, Chevy claims 2.6.
Okay.
But I mean, all of those numbers are supercar levels, and I can imagine giving it a ding by saying they're biting Ferrari styling, because the last couple of Corvettes have looked like someone at Ferrari styled them, or whoever. I don't know who styles Ferraris, Pininfarina or whatever. But I just think it can hold its own against any Italian supercar, and I'm guessing that the build quality is probably, if not better, at least as good as Italians, no offense, can put together.
I would disagree with that. I just don't think a vehicle from General Motors that shares components across that product lineup can compete against the might of Italian automotive excellence. And yes, I do say, okay, the Corvette can compete against some Ferraris, but I never, ever would say that it's a Ferrari killer. I mean, there's just absolutely no way that a single product could take out, Ferrari. That's a little bit of a hyperbole for me.
Look, you're talking about a motor that isn't going across vehicle platforms, right? That has a 5.5
the motor,
liter.
But the components are shared for sure.
I mean, imagine there's a 5.5 liter naturally aspirated V8 with a flat plane crank that makes 670 horsepower. It's naturally aspirated, and it makes 670 horsepower.
That's great, but we were talking about the interior fit and finish.
Well,
and I have to say, the seat position is weirdly great. It's like 90. It's like automatically. I was noticing this morning, 90 degree at my knees, 90 degrees at my elbows, at my shoulders, which I really love. I love that. But there, if you are at all claustrophobic, to me, the Corvette cabin it's weird. I like that it's unique and different, but it is like split in two with the way that the center console is. I like
that.
it.
I like that.
I like it, but it's weird. It's definitely different, and it's not for everyone. And I remember when they first came out with the C8, I drove it in Vegas, which weirdly was the day of the 2020 presidential election debate, which I remember very well, and Mr. Bloomberg was participated in that debate. So times are weird, but I remember even then thinking this cabin setup is really weird. I think I like it, but it's not for everyone.
That's fair. And I'll also defer to you on the Ferrari-ness, or I haven't spent almost any time in Ferraris. In fact, I think the only Ferrari I've ever driven was Sergio Marchionne's personal LaFerrari. And
that needs to change.
Only around the parking lot. But
I mean, that's a good one.
When I think of the Italian build quality, and to be fair, Ducati has really improved. I think of Lamborghini, and they're pretty good, but they're just not that great. And the Corvette, I think I love the interior. The one I'm in right now has a two-tone leather that works really well. The screen isn't fantastic, but then I don't really care about screens. I don't like screens that much. And I love the center console that cuts you off from the passenger seat and has all the buttons on. Like, it has all the buttons.
I would say,
let me just, one more point is that my wife from Spain, who is the most frugal person I've ever met, she has never said you should buy that or you should buy this. Like, she doesn't like buying things. Last night it came back in the Corvette E-Ray. I pulled into the driveway and she said, "Oh my goodness, you have to buy a Corvette."
What?
She absolutely
I'm
loves
shocked.
it. No, she absolutely loves it.
There's no denying its exterior styling is really cool. It gets attention. You know, I just had the 296 GTS in Miami.
And by the way, I think the C8 Corvette looks a lot better than the 296.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't. You're entitled to your opinion on that. But the last Ferrari I drove was that in Miami, and you just can't compare the interior fit and finish of Italy. And I would say get in more Ferraris, and then you'll start to see a difference. As someone who owns a Corvette, a C3, look, the interior in that car is horrible.
Okay, but we've come a long way, baby, since then.
Yes, we have, but this is the DNA of the company. The company has never excelled at interiors. Yes, it's gotten better, but in the history of Corvette, the interior has always trailed Italian craftsmanship. And that still remains true.
Okay, so I don't know enough about Ferraris to argue that. I just... when I think of Italian vehicles, I think of fix it again, Tony, you know? And that's been, I'm clearly exposed to a much lower level of Italian cars. But my experience with Corvette starts with the C6. It was the first one I ever drove.
Cool.
I thought it was brutal. I absolutely loved it. It was difficult for me to keep it, in one lane if I was on a turn because I could spin the rear wheels. Then I drove a C7. I've driven it around a number of tracks, including Monticello, which I had a great time in. And I thought it had a great transmission. I loved the stick shift in that, not the automatic. But I thought, gorgeous. I loved all the changes they made to it, and I loved the interior especially. And now that I'm driving the C8, which I was philosophically opposed to because I thought a Corvette should have a motor in the front, not behind you. But I have been evangelized. Like, I love having the motor behind me.
I can feel the fervor.
I love the way it looks. The interior, to me, is amazing and unique.
You don't care that there's no back seat?
No.
Or even a ledge?
No.
Does that bother you?
No.
You don't want a ledge.
This car, to me, is just about the driving experience.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be. I was talking to a Corvette aficionado, or someone who was before, and now I guess I am too. And I was saying, if I was going to buy this, I don't need the E-Ray. I don't need the Z06. Yes, they're special, and each one in its own unique way. One has a four-wheel drive system, and it's a hybrid. One has a naturally aspirated hammer of a motor, and it's a race car. I would just take a Stingray 3LT because I just want that feeling in the cockpit, that sound out of the tailpipes, and to be able to take the roof off when I want to. Plus, you can see the motor in the back, cool. Which I absolutely love. So to me, I'm sold.
I have to say, I got mine this morning. I drove it here to Century City to the newsroom, and I am really excited to have it for the weekend. I'm really excited to drive it. If I was going to spend that type of money, I would most definitely consider buying it. And in part, it's because it's a little contrarian to me. I mean, it's the whole Corvette thing. It's a little contrarian. You see them far fewer, in Beverly Hills and in Hollywood than you do other things. I do like it because it's different. I'm curious what the fuel efficiency number is on the hybrid for you. Did you happen to see that at all? Or see what you were averaging?
I saw it when I flipped through. I don't even want to guess because it would be unfair. But I will tell you that it's the very last thing I care about. I drive a Dodge Challenger, right? So to me, if it's 13 or better, that's fine.
I think I'm getting about 12 right now in the Z06.
That's
12 in the city.
The most fuel-efficient car I've had in the last 20 years has been my 911.
But don't you think when you hear hybrid, you think, oh, that car should be efficient? Doesn't that
I know
connect?
why people think that, but I haven't thought that since the 918. Because when the 918 and the P1 and the LaFerrari came out, I thought, wow, hybrids are going to be for performance rather than efficiency. I'm not the greenest guy on the planet. I do hope everyone else is green, but I don't want to be myself. And, it would be great to have good fuel efficiency because I don't like to go to the gas station that much, really. But I don't care. I don't care. But now listen, if I said you could have any version of the C8, Hannah, and I'll pay for it, but you can't resell it and reap the profits, would you choose the Z06 would you choose a lower model? Like, I feel like even if I had the choice, I might pick just the regular one because the E-Ray could get me in serious trouble. Like, many times. Is that
really how you feel?
Yeah, many times without noticing it in the past 20 hours, I've been deep into triple digits. And that's just too much.
The smile on your face is great, though. It's giving you joy. It's giving you joy.
The reason I bought the Challenger is because I can feel like I'm doing 100 and I'm only doing 45.
Yes.
And then this, I feel like I'm doing 45 and I'm doing 100.
I do agree that this doesn't necessarily apply to the Corvette, but the old saying, it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow
100%.
Is really true.
Yeah.
And a lot of these supercars and cars that can compete against supercars, when we drive them, at least when I drive them, I'm very aware that I'm not even tapping into half of what this car can do or what a professional driver could get out of the car. And it does seem kind of ridiculous. You know, I've had multiple Ferraris up on Angeli's Crest that I know I'm not even tapping into really what it can do because I don't want to die. You know, I'm very aware of my limitations as a driver. And so to that point, you're kind of right that, look, up past a certain point, any additional performance or power is really kind of ridiculous on a vehicle, you know, for someone like me or maybe you if you feel that same way.
That threat is even more pronounced with motorcycles. Like, nobody is able to actually wrench out 80% of a Ducati Panigale's performance. Not a regular person.
Right.
And we could all buy the smaller versions, the 959. But the 1199, the 1299, or now the V4, those engines just sound better, bigger, fuller. And it's the same is true of the Corvette. Like, the 6.2 liter sounds great. It sounds amazing compared to almost anything else on the road. But the Z06 sounds like terrifying. Like, I love it.
I know, and it's an ego thing for sure. I mean, it's for sure an ego thing. I like the idea, even personally for me, I like the idea of driving the big boy car and forcing everyone to see, you know, this blonde woman get out of it. Of course.
That is the best. I like that,
Yeah, and I definitely don't want the entry level, you know, that it's an ego. It's stupid. It's shallow, but it is what it is.
For me, it's almost an ego thing the opposite direction. I think, let me drive the base trim because then it looks like I don't even care.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't need to stretch up to the highest trim level because I'm that confident in myself that I can drive the base trim and still pull it off.
So would you buy a Cayman?
I wouldn't previously have bought a Cayman, and I've never driven a Cayman.
Oh,
so I've spent my entire Porsche life has been in 911s or SUVs, and I've always eschewed the turbos and the GT cars because the turbo for me is just looks like you're 65 years old, and you know, and the GT cars for me, they're too stiff. Yes. I like a more comfortable ride. So I've always thought the GTS was the sweet spot, but everyone's been telling me lately that the Cayman is the one to have.
The reason why I ask is because anytime you go out to the track, I mean, literally this week I was talking with Jörg Bergmeister, and you know, anytime you ask those professional drivers what they like and what's fun and you know what they're driving, they all say the Cayman is so much fun. It's very predictable. It's very planted. It's so balanced, and actually you can have as much fun or more driving a Cayman as you can a 911. The thing is, you know, it's seen as not as, you know, it's not the full on. It's not the adult. It's not the 911.
It's also not the right tool for my job, right? I want a GT car. I want to commute.
Of course.
In a car that's fast and handles well, you know, in the case of a 911, but I'm not going to the track in a car. If I'm going to go to the track, it's on a motorcycle.
Your reticence about the Cayman is not necessarily about its image.
No, it's definitely that too. Okay. It's all of the above. Although I think that's changed lately.
It should.
Look, Matt Farah has got this Cayman, whatever it is, the GT4 or whatever, and talks about it all the time. And he souped it up somehow and made it amazing. And I think more and more people are choosing the Cayman over the 911. And it's no longer. So I don't think it suffers anymore from the image that it has that the Boxster did originally. But yeah, for me, it's that too. Also, I'm not tracking it. I want, you know, a little bit more room.
Sure.
But if I were going to buy a purposeful track car or sports car, I would probably go the Cayman. Still, for the same price, I could get the Corvette, and it's a little bit more muscle. It's a little bit more brutal. It's a little bit more me.
It's more of a punch. It's cool.
More cylinders.
Cool. Yes. All of the above.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to say on the subject of these hybrids, and I've told you this a million times, but I am excited for a future in which hot rodders and resto-modders can take these hybrid vehicles, and probably EVs as well, but hybrid more fun because it has the engine as well, can take these. They both have 1.9 kilowatt hour batteries, right?
Yes.
These two hybrids. And at some point, and that's because of the size. They want it to be small. They want it to weigh less. And so they put a little battery in it to drive a little electric motor at the front or in the transmission or whatever the layout is.
Because you're constantly fighting weight with electric.
But in 20 years or in 30 years, you're going to be able to put a Hummer-sized 210 kilowatt hour battery in the same package as the 1.9 kilowatt because, it's like Moore's Law, but with batteries.
Sure.
So someday, someone's going to buy an old E-Ray, a 30-year-old E-Ray in 2060, and put like a flux capacitor in front and just upgrade the electric motor, and you're going to have 1,000 electric horsepower up front, and you're still going to have the rattle and hum of the big V8 in the back.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying. My question is, will the components and just the bearings and the structure of the vehicle at that point be able to withstand the forces that are now, exponentially stronger, more devastating with additional power?
I mean, I'm sure you're going to have to upgrade the suspension and maybe the axles and the drive shaft as well. But that's what you have to do if, like, when Singer takes out a 3-liter or a 3.2 from a 964 and puts in a big 3.8 liter or a 4-liter flat six, they're doubling the horsepower to what the vehicle originally was made to withstand, and I'm sure that they're upgrading the other drivetrain components that they need to as well. I feel
like you'd have to.
And maybe you'll have to do that someday too. But I think that in the layout in the case of the Corvette, the layout makes it much simpler to hot rod in the future because you have the electric motor just driving the front axle, as opposed to the Porsche, which has all this technological wizardry.
I don't even
know how.
It lost one turbocharger. It's now got the single turbocharger, which is a third bigger, and now it's got an E-turbo attached to the turbo, an E-motor. I think they're calling it an E-motor attached to the turbocharger. They've dropped the engine down like 110 millimeters, so they have more room to do the electric stuff up top. I mean, it's a whole apparatus that sounds like it would be more complicated if you're swapping things out in 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll hear more about your driving impressions for the 911 next week or the week after, actually.
Yeah, the week of July 9th, whatever week that is.
But I just think the simplicity in the E-Ray, the American simplicity in the Corvette, gives it another leg up. Can I just tell you a story about my Hummer as well?
I feel like, look, all I know is I'm in Spain. It got like jet lagged at some point in the middle of the night. And I get a text from you that is of your baby in a carrier on the floor. I don't know what you call them. I don't have kids, but in some sort of carrier.
A car seat. Just a car seat.
A car seat. On the floor, and she's sticking her tongue out. She has the cutest face, and you just basically say you're stranded.
Yes. All right.
So what happened?
So I will preface this because all the EV lovers, they say that they can navigate the infrastructure and charging an EV isn't hard, and you'll never get stranded if you're a smart person. And I'll just preface this by saying I'm an idiot, and I also sometimes run out of gas. Like on a pretty regular basis.
Oh, you're one of those people?
Yes.
Oh, Matt.
I'm like always calling my wife. Especially in motorcycles, because a lot of times motorcycles don't have a gas gauge.
Yeah, I know. That also gives me anxiety.
But I run out of gas on a pretty regular basis. But
you and Magnus.
But the thing is, in a gas car or like in a motorcycle, usually I can push it to a gas station, or in a car, I've run out of gas in my Raptor before, and it's no problem to get an Uber to a gas station and then get a can of gas and bring it back. It's annoying, but I'm used to my idiocy, so it doesn't bother me as much.
Can I just put a pin in this and ask really quick, what are you thinking when you see the gauge start to drop below E? What's your thought? Just it's not real, or what?
I'm always thinking I can make it Worst
So
is
you're an optimist.
Worst is in the Challenger because, and also I go out to parties like way out in the hills,
sticks.
in the sticks, and I'll be coming home from I'll be headed there, like I'm going up to like Massachusetts, right?
Okay.
To the middle of nowhere, and I'll notice that the fuel light went on, but I want to get to the party and see my friends, and I'm like, I'll just fill up after. And then I'm leaving at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
You probably have forgotten. You're like,
and gas stations closed. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? Anyway, so I'm driving the Hummer back to Westchester from New York. I'm stuck in traffic, and I see that I only have like 30 miles of range left.
oh, instant ulcer for me.
Right.
Instant.
But I don't care that much, and I'm thinking like, okay, I have 30 miles of range, but I'm only like 15 miles away from my house. I'll make it, no problem. And indeed, as I pull into my driveway, the Hummer goes into limp mode. So it no longer accelerates as quickly to save battery. It says, hey, dude, you only have 12 miles left on this battery. And I'm like, no problem. I got a supercharger station right down the street, or at least high-speed charger right down the street from me. I'll just pull in, make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and grab my kid and take her down to the charger because
Yeah.
I know it's going to take a few hours
Sure,
with this
bonding.
big battery. And I'm going to hang out with her, give her a bottle, whatever. She's 6 months old. So I drive down Central Avenue after I get my stuff and my baby.
Wait, how many miles were stated left?
It said
at
I had
this
12
point,
miles
remaining?
left.
Okay.
And
And
then
how far is the supercharger?
The high-speed charger is like 4 miles away.
Okay.
And I think it's not going to be a problem. So
And limp mode lets you drive how
limp mode,
fast?
it just depletes your acceleration. You can still drive, I think,
Okay.
faster. I don't know.
Okay.
40's as fast as I was going, and I was getting there quickly because that Hummer is so fast anyway. That thing weighs almost 10,000 pounds and does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds.
That's impressive.
It's super fun. It's dangerous fun because I think the front tires lift off the ground a little too much. But anyway, so I'm totally confident driving up Central Avenue. If anybody knows like Westchester, Scarsdale, there's a lot of stores and strip malls the whole way. And I get to the Shake Shack, and the supercharger station is just past that. I pull in the parking lot, and then I see like yellow police tape wrapped around all of the chargers.
Oh, no.
And I'm like,
Yep.
oh no, they're all broken. And I look down to see how much range I have, and it says 0 miles, 0%. And I'm
Nightmare.
yeah. Well, it's also
Nightmare scenario.
It's 92 degrees outside,
Oh,
and I've got my
And you've got a baby.
6-month-old baby. So I don't need the car just to work. I need the AC to stay
Yes.
on. Right.
This is a nightmare.
It is pretty bad. And then
Yeah.
I remember, okay, there's a Chevy dealer 4 miles back the other direction, and they must have a charger. And at the very least, if they don't, it's the manufacturer. It's the same, brand. So
Sure.
at least they'll hold
They won't
my
turn
truck
you
there.
away.
Exactly. Luckily, on the way back, and I'm scared the whole time, right?
Are you driving? The gauge says 0.
It says 0.
And you're
And
driving.
I'm still driving
Yeah.
back to the 4 miles
Okay.
away Chevy dealer. I see a Hyundai dealer like halfway, and I notice that they had a charger. So I turn in, and unfortunately it's being used and it's blocked. But this is where the baby comes in as my advantage. So I get out of the Hummer, I pull the whole car seat out, and I'm carrying this infant. And I'm like, hey guys, do you think you could possibly move those cars and let me charge up? I'm on 0. And they were super
Yes.
nice at the Hyundai place.
Because they're not monsters.
I might buy a Hyundai now. And they let me charge up. But the thing is, so I was okay, and I was never that worried.
How long did you have to charge?
So I, thinking of the baby, right? I can't charge for 2 hours because the baby's like doesn't want to be in the car seat. I'm trying to make it as quick as I can. After over an hour, I had added 100 miles of range. Over an hour. Now, to be fair, it was only giving me like 56, 57 kilowatts at a time, whatever. I'm not sure what those numbers mean, but I know that
Yes.
you can get up to 150. So it wasn't as fast as it could have been, but that thing takes forever to charge up. Like,
Yeah, and also we know that 100 miles on the gauge is not 100 real world miles.
true, but you know what?
as
I got
your
used to that
experience.
pretty quickly. That if you're on the highway and giving it a ton of gas, 100 miles
yeah.
is really like 70 or
Yes,
60.
and
But
that
you also
is-
know that if you're in the city and going stoplight to stoplight, then 100 miles is like 110.
Yeah, but that's kind of gaslighting on the part of the car. I feel like it just says numbers and you really can't trust it. You just can't trust it.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I think the same is true of a gasoline engine. It depends on how you drive it. When I look and see that I have, 30 miles left in my Challenger, and I'm like doing burnouts, and launch control the whole time, I realize that I'm not getting 30 miles out of it.
The thing about a gasoline engine is it never promises a specific amount of miles. So I never feel like it misleads me. It gives me a general indication, and then it's on me. And for me, if that gauge gets lower than half, I'm putting more gas in. I'm someone that I need that gauge to feel safe, secure, and confident. I need my gas tank to be like half full at least, preferably more.
See, if I were more like you, I wouldn't run out of gas.
No, I just, it's so annoying. It's so needless. I'm glad you're okay because luckily Hyundai came to the rescue.
Well, and the problem is my wife.
Well, no, I can't. I know she's going to listen to this, and I'm going to have to take up for her because I don't think that's a great sentence.
I know that she's always there to come to my rescue, and she, like you, is a very conservative.
Are you saying she enables?
She enables me because I know that if I ever get stuck, I can call her up, and she'll come and get me. And
wow. Maybe she should not come and get you to teach you a lesson. That's one of these days.
Maybe that's
she might be busy at Pilates and unable to exit the class.
As long as I have the baby in the back. I think I'm good.
Yeah. And is she any mother? I mean.
All right. So anyway, the Hummer, I still loved it, by the way.
I was going to say, did it sour you on the Hummer now?
Not at all, because I knew it was totally my fault.
Okay.
It does, though. You do have to, be thinking about it in advance, charging, where am I going to charge? You can't let it get down to 30 miles or less of range.
I feel like I have so many other things that I'm thinking about. I don't want that to be one more thing that I have to plan in my day.
The other thing is people like the charging infrastructure does need to improve. I can park at a lot across the street that has, I think it's even called like Plug Power or something. And they only have like a level 1 charger, like just like plugging it in at my house. So, and they charge me $20 a day, and it only adds like 14 miles.
It basically plugging in a toaster, except for
I think it'll get better.
Car.
I think it'll get better. And the Hummer, I love the design. I love the bigness of it. If I can use a Trumpian.
The idea of it is yeah. I don't know if it's going to get better, Matt. I mean, EV sales are really taking a hit.
That's true.
Down. They're all political now.
And I do like it though better than most of the other EV truck offerings. As I said, I'd prefer a Hummer to a Tesla Cybertruck.
Yes, I recall.
And I think I would prefer it to a traditional truck, that is to say like a Silverado or an F-150 that's electrified.
What about, in theory, the electric Escalade? I know that's not a pickup, but it's something also big
I
and
think
spacious.
I'd rather have the Escalade for sure. Because it's going to be more luxurious.
Yes.
That's the point of the Escalade. It's not supposed to be a utilitarian vehicle, which the Hummer is supposed to be. And the best thing about the Hummer, other than the monstrous battery and big electric motors, is the rear wheel steering.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now that is optional on a Silverado and Sierra are going to have rear wheel steering as well.
Okay. Noted.
And 911 is the one you're used to that has. I know. You can tick that box.
I realize now I've gotten in cars that don't have it, and I'm not as great a driver as I thought.
It is certainly noticeable. Like
I know.
It really
that
you
helps.
have.
I know.
But the only so I would love the Escalade. I haven't driven it yet. I don't think anyone has. I haven't seen any reviews.
I don't think anyone has. Yeah, I keep asking them about it.
I'll be pumped when that thing comes out. Because I think I would rather have that than like a Range Rover.
Yeah, I do too.
But I've never driven a Rivian, and that's my big question mark. Because I would, I love the way they look. The design is so cool. They have massive power. You can put a motor on each wheel, so it's like 2 limited slip differentials, and the tech looks really good. Although I just recently read that even the updated Rivian doesn't have Apple CarPlay.
Yeah, I'm supposed to get the new second generation Rivian SUV at the end of July, and that's something I guess I'll look for. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
But that's shocking.
Or Android Auto or whatever they call Android's version of Apple Car. They don't have that stuff. And I'm guessing it's because they think, hey, we can do it better. But that kind of hubris isn't necessary. And nobody ever does it better than Apple. So, like, why wouldn't they just have Apple CarPlay?
I don't know. You know, Rivian is a company that I think really runs itself thinking that it's a tech company, not an automotive company. And I agree. I think that's not. It doesn't give them an advantage when they're actually going up against automakers. I mean, should we talk about this VW investment in Rivian?
Yeah, no, that was the massive news of the week.
Yeah, that was the massive news of the week. And, you know, it's been really interesting because Rivian has really been losing, you know, $40,000 per vehicle. It's just been really going downhill. And
when I see that, by the way, Hannah, it makes me want to buy one because it feels like because they're giving you $40,000 off. Basically, they're like, we'll make this vehicle for $140,000 and we'll sell it to you for $101. Thank you, I'll take that. You know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure you will have lots of options to buy one, and hopefully you'll get in one to drive and compare it against all of your other EV trucks. I remember thinking that it was decent when I drove the R1T. I haven't driven the SUV yet. Like I said, I'm supposed to get one in a few weeks. But yeah, this news that VW is going to invest $5 billion into Rivian, I think mostly as a way to sort of catch up with Tesla. This is really interesting because it's basically giving Rivian a lifeline. I mean,
it's also interesting because Volkswagen has been like a hot mess in terms of blowing billions and billions of dollars on electric vehicle and digitalization investments. I mean, they have slated investments of more than $100 billion between, I think, 2023 and 2028. So a 5-year period, $100 billion on electric vehicles and digitalization. So instead of blowing all that cash, now they're like, oh, wait, we could just spend 1/20th of that and get, like, I think Rivian has great brand equity. Even if they only make 57,000 cars a year, people think, oh, cool, there's a Rivian, you know? And everybody thinks RJ Scaringe is like a genius who just got in trouble because of the supply chain problems we had from the pandemic. At least that's how I sort of view it. And they could just rebody an R1T or an R1S, and there's your Scout. The point is, they're just getting someone else's incredible work for $5 billion when they're already blowing $100 billion. Like, it looks like a great deal to me. Now, the problem is the partnerships don't last with either of these two.
Well, two things for sure, because we do know that Rivian has tried to do EVs with Ford. That didn't work out.
Mercedes, they wanted to make a deal with Mercedes.
Mercedes to build vans, which also didn't work out. VW has had its own investments, I think, in Argo AI. That didn't work out.
Yep.
So
they have Xpeng.
You know, what's different now? And the bigger question for me is, why hasn't VW, with all of its might, been able to figure out EVs?
I don't get that either. I don't get it either. Like, think about VW has Volkswagen, Audi, Skoda, Porsche, Bugatti.
They've
Bentley,
got Rimac now too.
Yeah, Lamborghini.
You know?
I mean, they have a million brands. I think it's actually like 10 to 12 brands. And I can't think of one good EV. Now, you could say the Porsche Macan. And I see Car and Driver has it ranked as...
You don't like the Taycan?
Okay, that's true, the Taycan. And Audi also. Sorry, Audi has the e-tron.
E-trons are, I think, solid.
They're solid, but they're like not Tesla killers, right? I mean, you could say they perform better than Teslas, but they don't have the range.
Yeah,
There's something about the EV nut that the Volkswagen Group can't crack.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I don't get it. And I'm like, what are they doing with Rimac? You know, I know they're building Bugattis and they're sourcing Pininfarina Battistas, but what is being taken from that partnership too? Because Rimac does electric vehicle propulsion as well.
I guess their strategy is like, guys, let's spend as much money as we possibly can on our own. Plus, let's make these huge partnerships with all of the other small companies that are doing it as well. And then it's like, we're going to hit something, right?
Yeah,
it's like a
I
shotgun
think that
approach.
Might be, the shotgun approach for sure. And maybe, they just acquire everything so that really it is Tesla against the world, and maybe that's an advantage in the end.
I'm still excited to see what they can do. I think it's I'm a glass half full kind of person, so
yeah, obviously,
yeah.
with your
I'm
gasoline situations.
All right, I guess that's all we had to talk about for this week, and I'm really looking forward still to our conversation with Tom Wagner next week. Both of us have listened to Barry Ritholtz's Masters in Business podcast with Tom.
Great interview.
Amazing
yeah,
interview.
Really interesting. I learned so much. So we're not going to rehash any of that stuff with Tom. We're going to ask him new questions.
Right. We're going to ask about better. Singer.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to ask about I care about
EVs.
Revology.
Yeah.
We'll ask if because Barry said he thinks that EV is a superior propulsion system to ICE. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that leaves me
He was talking
crickets.
about like dollar to horsepower, basically. Saying like you can be much faster. Which, if you're drag racing people at the stoplight, from that point of view, it's true, I guess.
Sure, instant torque is something, but it's not everything.
It's not everything.
It's not everything.
So definitely tune in for that next week. And then I'm just excited also to hear more about your take on the Z06 because...
Me too.
To me, that's a supercar for sure. And
it's a super car.
All right. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.